Today we're going to be talking about what really is happening with Dan Bilzerian. Make sure you stay until the end so you don't miss out on this riveting story. You'll be absolutely shocked. King of Instagram? Dan Bilzerian seems to have it all. His Instagram paints a picture of a lifestyle. He also has a bevy of bikini-clad beauties on hand, whether he's at the beach, flying in his private jet, or even lying in bed. His wealth seems massive, affording him the luxury of a life of constant jet-setting and pleasure-seeking. Regardless of who he speaks to regarding the source of his wealth, Bilzerian sticks to the story that he made his fortune off playing high-stakes poker. Regrettably for him, this story seems to have fallen under scrutiny lately from actual poker experts who have criticisms ranging from the fact that Bilzerian just isn't that good of a poker player to the fact that there just isn't as much money to be made in poker as he claims to have made. Dan's father, Paul Bilzerian, served prison time for crimes associated with his activities as a corporate raider. Though he was ordered to pay a $62 million civil judgment for securities fraud, Paul Bilzerian only paid $3.7 million. As to the whereabouts of the rest of his fortune, that remains a mystery, but it's not a far leap of the imagination to assume that he utilized offshore and domestic trusts to protect any remaining assets for his family. Could this be the source of Dan's wealth? It's more attractive to think of an Instagram celebrity armed with a private jet, a bevy of attractive women at his beck and call, and several armloads of someone else's money has zero problems. This is how our society trains you to think. Envying someone in this situation is even more compelling in the context of months-long coronavirus-induced isolation. But at least in the case of Dan Bilzerian, this thinking is wrong. For the CEO of Ignite, a still nascent and still incoherent cannabis brand, the COVID-19 summer of 2020 has presented challenges aplenty, and if the last month is any indication, the autumn may be worse. $50 million. The news in July reported that Ignite was $50 million in the red, a financial hardship that forced Bilzerian's company to agree to end the lease on his rented by the company Los Angeles mansion, even as he was yachting around the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, shares in the company tanked, slipping from 1.44 Canadian dollars to about 36 cents as of the most recent trading. Bad optics and bad business, but the lesson of the year 2020 is that there is no bottom. And so, late last week, news broke that CanMart, a distribution company that moves Ignite-branded products in Canada, where Bilzerian's firm is publicly traded, was ending its relationship with Ignite. Is Dan Bilzerian a worried man? Speculation is rife, and his company, Ignite, continues to wallow in bankruptcy. The poker player turned internet personality could be fleeing the country as his company stares at closure in just a few weeks. Dan Bilzerian, infamously known as the King of Instagram, is an American venture capitalist with 32.5 million followers on the platform. He's also an amateur poker player and is claimed to have been honorably discharged from the US Navy SEALs after completing his training. On Instagram, most of his posts are about his extravagantly rich lifestyle. Company in a worse financial crisis. YouTuber Tom Nash, who recently analyzed Ignite's financial records for the past 6 months, reported that the company is in a dire financial situation that could see it shut down in just 2 weeks. Recently, Dan Bilzerian, who is Ignite's founder and CEO, has been posting pro-Armenian nationalist tweets that have got everyone wondering what's really going on with Dan and his company. Some months ago, a report by Forbes revealed that the Ignite company lost a staggering $50 million in 2019, which was seen as lavish spending by the CEO. Ignite International Brands specializes in several products, including electronic cigarettes, cannabis, and others. However, Dan Bilzerian has scorned such rumors, as supported by his recent tweets. In one of his tweets, he mentioned Uber as an example to draw a parallel and counter-bankruptcy speculation about Ignite. YouTuber Philon allegedly called Dan the man-baby of Instagram, and he has been criticized as well by a few content creators in the past. His source of funding is the company Ignite International Limited, of which he is the CEO and founder. However, recently, it has been claimed that most of his life is based on lies. Dan Bilzerian going bankrupt, facing legal troubles. In July, Bloomberg had reported that former Ignite president Curtis Heffernan has filed a suit against the company. Heffernan claimed that he was fired for refusing to approve Dan Bilzerian's extravagant spending. The company has not been in the best financial shape and received a $1.2 million paycheck in Paycheck Protection Program loans for the US government in 2019. Furthermore, Ignite International Limited reported a loss of over $50 million last year, which has been widely attributed to the CEO's extravagant spending. Currently, Ignite has more liabilities than assets, and Dan Bilzerian has been allegedly funneling investors' money to fuel his extravagant habits. In the video that can be seen at the end of this article, YouTuber Jamari talks about all these issues and also questioned Dan Bilzerian's poker skills. The 39-year-old has also been widely said to be a below-average poker player, and has actually been criticized for his Casanova-like lifestyle, especially with younger women. Moreover, the company that he founded is basically bankrupt and at the same time owes over $40 million to investors. Presidential changes. Ignite is a consumer-focused brand that does not really seem to sell that much. The company reported $1.6 million in sales in 2020 in its more recent financial statements, good for only about $600,000 in actual profit. Add to that the news that Ignite shuffled company leadership again last month. John Schaefer, who recently put in time at cannabis unicorn MedMen, also took over as president on September 1st. Ignite's third president since June. And what you're left with is a picture of a flailing business sinking further into turmoil, or whatever this is. John Schaefer, who boasts of experience of grocery chain Wegmans and pharmaceutical giant Bayer's agricultural wing in addition to a year at MedMen, itself is a bit of an ongoing dumpster fire. There's some continuity. According to his LinkedIn, Schaefer's been with Ignite for more than a year, joining the company as Chief Operating Officer in August 2019 following a stint with MedMen, which he departed before the company imploded. Schaefer took over from Lester Lee, whose term as Ignite's president lasted just shy of 3 months. Lee, whose previous ventures included selling something called Energy Gum, remains on the company's board of directors, and Lee was installed as president in early June, when he replaced Curtis Heffernan. Heffernan exited on June 8 to pursue other opportunities. Ignite initially claimed in a press release. That's true in a sense, but Heffernan is currently pursuing a lawsuit against Ignite for, among other things, firing him as retaliation for pushing back against what he characterized as Dan Bilzerian's wanton and wild spending on the company's credit card. Heffernan did not last awfully long though. He took over from Jim McCormick in November 2019, but he has the distinction of being Ignite's second longest tenured president. 4 presidents in less than a year. What's next for Ignite? Searching for the next future ex-president? End of the road for Ignite? Alas, Ignite failed to file its Q2 financials on time, releasing it just 2.5 months after the deadline. But this still raises a lot of questions. When they finally released their financials, they did so that nobody could find them. It's not on their own website, which is appalling. What kind of public company doesn't put its own financials on its own website? That's unheard of. So they throw it on some website which is hard to get to. The Ignite company started the year with $15.1 million and ended the second quarter with $5.8 million. This implies it burned more than $9 million in just 6 months, translating into $1.5 million every month. Basically, Dan Bilzerian is a trustafarian, but given the outcome of his own business ventures, he's not a particularly clever one. In addition to his trust fund, Bilzerian has been using the company Ignite International Brands Limited as something of a personal treasure trove. There seems to be a lot of online personalities gleefully covering Bilzerian's deception. Perhaps it's because they can't stand him as a person. Perhaps it's to throw it in his followers' faces. The source of his money doesn't matter as much as the illusion that he sold. The truth doesn't matter as long as this illusion is standing strong. And if Dan is a master at anything, it's building this illusion for men and women. While you're here, go ahead and click on one of these videos on your screen. See you there!